And so I'm going to mute now, and I'm going to turn it over to Ken Page, who's going to introduce himself, tell you why he's in this field. Again, please do not request a share. I will X you out. It's nothing personal, and follow along on his slides if you'd like to do so. So I am me if you've got questions, and then we will ask them after he's done with the presentation. Take it away.
Okay, hello everybody. Tammy, can I ask you to nod if you can hear me clearly? Beautiful. Okay, hello everybody. I'm so glad to be here. And the recovery community has been a really important community in my life, my family's life, and this is very, very close to my heart, and I'm just thrilled to be here. I have to remember not to look at myself, but to look at the little camera dot there. I'm just going to say a few things about my journey and what led me to be a speaker and a writer and a teacher and an entrepreneur in the arena of helping people find love. For me, my life has been, in a certain way, like one of the deepest, richest themes in my life has been a drama between the part of me that is frightened by love, the part of me that pushes love away, the part of me that bristles against intimacy, and the part of me that longs for it. And that journey of learning and discovery has been like one of the hallmark journeys of my life. And I'm happy to say that even though that's not been an easy journey, the pull toward love and intimacy has been deeper and more compelling in my life than the pull toward isolation. But I had to climb my way out of so many bad habits, including sex addiction and deep internalized homophobia and shame, so many different things. And I guess I'll just say a little bit about how that journey has looked and what's led me here and what I feel I have to offer to the recovery community and everyone in the world, really, who is seeking healthy, sustainable love. So I grew up a gay kid, child of Holocaust survivors. And the qualities in me of deep sensitivity and spirituality and tenderness of spirit and being gay, all those qualities didn't really have a place either in the world or in a family that had built itself up based on principles of toughness and survival. So I felt really out of place in a lot of different ways in the world. I always wanted community. I always wanted intimacy. And my entire life has been a journey to get past the parts of me that push that away in order to find it. So what that looked like was years and years, and I have to admit, decades of being what I called chronically single. Until I kind of reached a point in my late 20s, early 30s, where I was on my knees. And where I realized that I had to become a student of what I was doing wrong and begin to change that. So I began to seek help and advice and therapy. And I started to learn little by little how even though I was looking for love, I was pushing it away at the same time. Quick side note here. The amazing thing about online dating and the dating world in general is that it's built for people like I was, who are really hungry for relationship and connection, but who don't necessarily have the tools to sustain that. I'll say more about that in a little while. That journey, though, led me to learn so much. One of the pieces that it led me to learn, because growing up gay in the world of the 80s, the 90s, meant that I had a lot of sexual compulsion behaviors, and I needed help for that, support for that. Growing up in the family, amazing family, but also traumatized family that I grew up in, meant that I needed Codependence Anonymous, that I needed ACOA, not that there was alcohol in my direct family, but kind of those very issues. So program has been very close to my heart, and some of the people that I love most dearly have either been in program or very close family members have been in program. So it's been close to my heart and my soul, and as a psychotherapist, deeply, deeply connected to my work. So another quick pause here just to say that the skills of dating are nothing more than the skills of intimacy, but the skills of recovery are the skills of intimacy, dating, and love. So that the skills that each one of you has learned in your recovery journey are the very skills that will make you more successful in being able to find love. I'm going to say a lot more about that, but there's a huge message of hope. The work that you have done in your recovery journey, I promise you, will give you such a leg up to use the tools that I'm going to be talking about in this class today. You will have such a leg up. You will understand, you will connect, because you have a foundation of recovery, and the skills of recovery are the foundation of the skills of intimacy. And I'll talk about that more. But just to get back to my story. So I learned, I grew, I taught as I learned. Somewhere along the way, at 45 years old, 44 years old, I was still looking. I was still not finding. And the path of my intimacy journey led me in a different direction. I felt called to become a dad. So I actually took that path. And 9 months later, I was able to adopt my infant son from Cambodia. And that changed my life, changed my world, opened my heart, exploded my heart. Because when we say yes to love in any of its dimensions, our world opens up, our luck changes, our heart opens, and we shift our field. Different things happen. This was such a huge shift in my field that led to so much love, and it also led to the creation of an event called Deeper Dating, a dating event for people who are single and committed to deeper values, which then led to my writing, which then led to my book, my podcast, my course, my teaching, and then a platform called deeperdating.com, which tries to live all of those principles for single people and help them meet each other based on these principles. Anyway, all of that happened because I kept trying to say yes to love, and because I admitted to myself again and again this humbling truth of what clay feet I have when it comes to intimacy, but then committed to doing the work. That journey led me to my son. The journey to my son and becoming a parent led me to an event for LGBTQ families. That event led me to my husband and his children. And we've been together now 13 years. And every day is a lesson in intimacy. Every day is a humbling experience of seeing the subtle and not so subtle ways that I push love away, but also celebrating the wonderful ways that I have said yes to love and I've committed to doing the work. And that's the heart and the soul of the recovery journey, is that commitment to doing the real work. So in completing this story, just want to acknowledge each one of you for your own humbling experience of admitting powerlessness, admitting stuckness, admitting that you needed some rewiring and that you care deeply about your growth and your life enough to do that. So to all of us, I just want to say that we should celebrate ourselves for being students of intimacy and students of recovery. I also just want to apologize for the planes. I live right next to JFK Airport, and so it's a little bit loud. Hopefully my mic is not too sensitive to that, but if you hear like some plane stuff, you know what it is. Okay, so that's kind of my personal story, and I celebrate this story because it's a story of falling down and getting up again and again and again. And at 64 years old, with a lot of ups and downs and a lot of tumult, including having kids, one of whom is a teenager, this is something that I have learned. The acronym of God as good, orderly direction. When we keep doing the work of saying yes to love and admitting and acknowledging the ways we push love away and committing to change and heal that. When we do that week after week and year after year, our lives get better and richer. Even with all of the ups and downs that happen, there is an upward arc of healing, an upward arc of solidifying love and meaning in our lives. So this is, again, acknowledging each one of you because, I will say this, as a psychotherapist, I have often had clients who were suffering and in pain, and I would think to myself, what's the 12-step program for them? What's the recovery program for them? Because if they had the 12-step tools of recovery, they would get out of this kind of self-involvement that ends up causing pain for all of us. And they would learn lessons that I don't know anything else that can teach, like the world of 12-step recovery. So just saying that too, I just want to share that. So now, I want to speak to everyone. Now, this to everyone who's in a relationship and want to learn these lessons, because these lessons apply to everybody, but also to the people who are single and looking for healthy, real, beautiful, sustainable love. Because the path to finding love is a path, it is really one of the greatest spiritual journeys of our entire lives, as well as one of the greatest missions of our adult lives. So what does that mean? Well, the research shows that the quality of our spousal relationship affects the quality of our life more than anything else, including our health. Now, for those of you who are single, that doesn't mean you can't have a rich life without a partner. It does mean, though, that when you choose a partner, the partner that you choose and the work that you do in that relationship count hugely. But also, all of our intimate relationships count. And there's so much research backing this up. I don't know if you've seen this YouTube video, just such an amazing video of these two babies, two infants. They were premature, and they were twins, and they were in separate incubators, and one was failing to thrive. They were tiny, 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 and they were so young, they were almost newborns, and one was failing to thrive. And when it became really serious and it looked like she was not going to make it, the nurse said, I'm going to try something that I wouldn't normally do. I'm going to take the baby who's doing well and put her next to her twin sister, who is really not going to make it, probably not going to live unless something happens. So they took the twin sister and put her next to her other sister. And this is captured on video. This tiny baby with these like shrivelly little arms takes her arm, so moving, and puts it around her baby sister. The minute she did that, the baby sister's vitals began to change. And she began to recover, and she survived. And that's such a beautiful story about kind of the power of love in our lives. It's unimaginable how much love means to us. And so doing the work of intimacy, and I'm going to talk about what that work is, kind of creates a similar effect in our lives. Our vitals change, our health changes, our being changes, we heal ourselves, which is why this path to finding love really matters. And we get taught that the search for love is like a game. It's like some kind of gimmick-filled approach. Sometimes I think that like dating advice was created by a bunch of like anxious teenagers. Play hard to get, act really confident, act really cool, change the way you look, etc., etc. But those things actually don't really lead to healthy love. They lead to anxiety, insecurity, and a lot of defensive behaviors in the land of dating that end us up in really bad places. The true skills of dating are the skills of intimacy. And those are the greatest skills of all for a happy, meaningful, and rich life. So the things that I'm going to be talking about are, in my decades of work, on myself in my decades of work as a teacher and as a therapist, and just simply as a human being. These are kind of revelations and insights that I have had that are not about dating better, but about living better. Not about dating in truth, but about love and about authenticity and about empowerment. These are some of the deepest and richest truths I know. But the fabulous news is that when we live them in our dating life transforms. We find ourselves attracted to different people. We really do. It really happens. It's an amazing thing. There's a deeper physics to dating, which we'll be talking about. And when we live these skills of deeper intimacy, we learn deeper self-love, our search for love changes, and our chances of finding beautiful, healthy, caring, exquisite, true love increase profoundly. So I'm moving up to the next slide here. And what we have here, if you look at this target image, is just as simple as a tiny little diagram, but as vast as a map of your entire intimacy journey. And a tool, an actual tool that you can use forever to help you deepen your intimacy skills. So this target, if you take a look at it, is a target that is a map of your authenticity and a map of your being. And if you picture, the closer you move in toward the center of that target, the closer you move to your authentic self, your vulnerability, your passion, your tenderness, your fierceness, your creativity, your originality, your longing. Those are hot places. Those are places that are very charged. And those are also places where most of us have been taken advantage of, stepped on, neglected, because the places that are the closest in toward the center are the places where you care the most. And the places where we care the most are the places where we can be both most inspired, but also most hurt. So what we do is we move out from that heated center of our being, from the deepest inner petals of our being, from the fire of who we really are, to more self-protected, defended ways of being. So in the center of this target is what I call the source of self. This is the essence of our being. I think that's a sacred, sacred place. You don't need to believe in God. It doesn't matter. It's sacred because this place is the heart and the soul. It's the inmost petals of our being. What matters more than that? So, because it's hard to bear those parts of ourselves, and it takes a huge amount of bravery and skill to live from that place, what do? We kind of fudge it. We develop a personality structure. We develop a way of presentation that is cooler, a little less real, a little more people approval seeking, pushes intimacy away. It's a more airbrushed version of ourselves. And the further out we go, the safer we are, at least at first. So around that center where it says source of self, you see gift zone. That's the way in which we can live where we are in touch with our magic. That's the place. We're not necessarily in the very nuclear core of our being, but we're close enough that we are warmed by our humanity. We're close enough that we can feel our creativity. We can feel our heart. And that's a magical place to be. And the skills of recovery are the skills that teach us how to be in this gift zone. How is that so? Some of the skills of recovery are the skill of being honest to ourselves, being able to admit when we are disconnected from who we are, being able to admit that we are hungry, angry, lonely, tired, somehow disconnected from our healthy, integrated self. That's a big deal, being able to admit that. And I know that you know that people in the rooms have an ability that most of the rest of the world has not cultivated, to admit when we're disconnected to ourselves, to admit when we're doing something that's off, to admit that we're causing pain to ourselves and to other people. It's built into the 12 steps of recovery, but that makes people in recovery hugely special, I think. Another skill that allows us to be in our gift zone is the ability to see our humanity. As a psychotherapist who's worked with a lot of people, a way in which people who are in the rooms in recovery stand out to me is they can say, oh, I screwed that up. I messed that up. Oh, I was not really handling this in the best way. I need to make amends. Who does that in the world outside of people in recovery? Only the most precious, wisest people. So these are skills, though, that allow intimacy to happen. And I guess that second skill that I'm talking about here is kind of a more compassionate way of holding our humanity. Something I talk about a lot in my podcast and in my work. And if I have time today, I'll talk about that a little bit more. But okay, so then let's say you are not living in the gift zone. Let's say you're frightened. Let's say you're numb. Let's say you're exasperated or tired or worried or defensive. So we move out into the zone of protection. That's where we start getting disconnected from ourselves. That's where we start maybe binge eating or watching a ton of TV or just being defensive. And the further we go outward in the zone of protection, that safety starts to turn into a feeling of emptiness. And as we move out further to the zone of disconnection, that's where that emptiness actually becomes dangerous. Because the closer we are to the center of our being, the warmer we feel, the more connected to the warmth of our humanity. And the minute, and I think you'll know what I mean, even in sadness, even in grief, when you're connected to the inner petals of your humanity, to the heart and soul of your being, there's a way that even in your sadness, there's a warmth. You're connected to the warmth of your heart. Well, in that zone of disconnection, you're not anymore. And there's a terrible coldness and emptiness. And this is the pain that people who are active in their addiction live with all the time and try to fill with substances or addictive behavior. It's what rageaholics or narcissists try to fill with their unhealthy behaviors. It's a hard zone, and you know what? Most of us have been there. There is no shame in being in the zone of disconnection. But the work, the way that this map becomes an inner game of healing and intimacy, is this process that I call the intimacy fix. And that is, you say, okay, where am I on this target? And right now, listening to my talk, you can actually take a moment and think, where am I in this target? Do I feel connected to the sacred part of me? Do I feel connected to my warmth? Are these stories and these ideas touching me in a way that I can feel a kind of swelling of heart, of warmth? Then you're in your gift zone. Or am I kind of feeling really numb for whatever the reasons? Am I like, scarfing down chocolate as I'm listening? Speaking about me, am I, what am I doing? Am I numb? Am I disconnected? Am I using? What am I doing? Where am I? Am I feeling deeply empty and disconnected? Am I needing support, but I'm not asking for it? Just take a minute, and if you had a pin, where would you put it on this target? And wherever it is fine. We hold that with compassion. But now, what I want to ask you is, what could you do? Something that we can ask ourselves. And I ask myself in speaking right now, I feel very much in my gift zone because this is sacred stuff to me. And I feel very emotionally connected. But all of us, me included, can now ask ourselves, what could I do to move closer to the center of this target right now, at this moment? Or if we're in a loving relationship with someone, what can I do at this moment to move closer in my connection with this person to the center of the target? And you can think about that right now. That exercise turns this into a game, but it's a glorious game. It's a game of intimacy, and it's a game that will, over the years, fill your heart and fill your life more and more with richness and meaning. So this is an image that I encourage all of you to take with you, and an exercise that I encourage all of you to do as often as you want. So this is the map of intimacy. And I guess the last thing that I want to say there is that the skills that you have learned in sobriety are the skills that will help you live in your gift zone. Service, connection to others, getting help, not feeling like you need to do it alone. In fact, I just want to take a little pause here and just say something that I think is really interesting. There's a book called Change or Die by Alan Deutschman. Powerful book. It was a New York Times bestseller. And what he did was he looked at a whole bunch of people who had had cardiac events. They had strokes, heart attacks, and their doctors had said to them, because of the specifics of their condition, you need to change your diet. If you don't change your diet, you will die. It's that simple. These were people that were really, really needed to hear that. Okay, so of course, 99% of the people said that they would change their diet. But a few years out, even with this life and death awareness, something like 90% of people didn't make it. They went back to their old ways of eating. And what he discovered were the keys. What he did was he studied the 5 or 10% of people who actually changed their diet and stuck with it. And what he discovered were the keys, are the exact keys that you are so blessed to be living in your recovery. What were they? Have a template and a process and a path that makes sense to you and is sane and has wisdom. Have a community of people supporting you. And in that community, be allowed to fail and rewire, and fail and rewire, and fall down and pick yourself up and learn and learn and learn through the entire process. Those were the people that made it. And the truth is, research shows that you've got a 10% chance of creating deep, effective change if you do it alone. And your chance goes up dramatically the degree to which you get support. Which is why in all of my classes, in all of my teachings, even on the Deeper Dating platform, I encourage everybody to have learning partners so that they don't go through the steps of dating alone. So moving on to the next concept, this is a concept called core gifts, and it's very connected to what we've been talking about. So I'm going to speak about it a little bit briefly. But here's what it is. Your core gifts are the qualities that you find in your gift zone. They are qualities that are to some degree universal, but in another way, they're like fingerprints. They're very uniquely yours. They are the things, the places you feel the most tender and the most passionate. And the truth is, the great truth is that for most of us, our biggest fear is admitting the tenderness of our being, celebrating and honoring the tenderness of our being. Our biggest fear is feeling the ferocity of our individuality and our passion, the fierceness of the things we care about the most, which make us stand out and could get us in trouble. Embracing these things is huge. A question you can ask yourself, which is very nitty-gritty, and I'm taking, because this deeper dating path is a path that is, very rich and has so many different components, but I'm just kind of picking out some of the key ones. And, there'll be lots of ways to learn more about this and actually to meet people on a platform that allows for this. And I'll talk about that later. But this is a great one. So for everyone who is single and listening to this, and everyone who's coupled and listening to this, this question is fabulous. What are the parts of yourself that you are the most timid to reveal in your romantic life? Now, I don't mean like what are the stories that you might feel the most embarrassed about or awkward to talk about. I'm asking you, what are the personality qualities? Like for me, they are a deep sensitivity. They're like a fierce love of truth. Um, those are some qualities of mine that I am embarrassed to show that I have to constantly re-embrace in myself and take brave steps in my marriage and in my relationship with my children. It's constant bravery to be able to embrace those. But for you, what are those qualities that that you are most timid to reveal? Those are your core gifts. And the way that you can discover what those core gifts are in a deeper, richer way, well, actually, I'll tell you those in a moment. The next slide captures something else.
Oh, hold on just 1 second. We lost you. So I don't know what happened to your camera, but I can't
Oh,
see you.
that's odd. I see myself, Tammy.
Oh, you
True.
do? Well, then maybe it's just on my end. I'm going to let it go because I can hear you well. So proceed. I'm sorry.
Well, no, maybe if anybody is listening and cannot see me, instant message Tammy, so then we would know. Or if you can see her,
Now I
instant.
can see you. Now it's all good. We're good.
Woo, woo. I wonder
Yeah.
what it was. Okay.
Don't know. Glad I can.
I'm glad I'm back too. Okay, so this is a formula that to me gives me a quality of awe, like I feel if I'm looking at the stars in a night sky. This is the deeper physics of dating. And here it is. The degree to which we honor and treasure our core gifts, we will become sexually and romantically drawn to people who love us for who we are. And the degree to which we don't honor and treasure our core gifts, and I'm not talking about accepting, I'm talking about treasuring. The degree to which we don't do that is the degree to which we're going to be attracted romantically and sexually to people who are not good for us. This is something that is vast. And in working with thousands of people, it's something I have seen again and again. And on my podcast, I get people sharing reviews that say that they've experienced this as well. It's an amazing thing. When you start naming your core gifts, embracing them, and honoring and dignifying them, and when you make this commitment to only choose people who do the same, watch. You're going to start meeting people who are higher quality people. You are going to meet people, you'll start meeting people who are emotionally safer. And even if you're not used to that, little by little, you will find yourself more and more attracted to those kind of people. An amazing thing. So the two qualities for discovering your core gifts, and here is a process that you can do. I mean, you can do this in my book. You learn this, and there are other places too. But here's something you could do without the book, without anything that you could just do over a period of 2 days. Get a journal. And I want you to focus in those 2 days on noticing two things. What things hurt your heart the most? Like, instead of just telling yourself, like you're in an interaction with somebody and you feel like a twang of ouch, instead of telling yourself, I'm too sensitive, I'd like you now to say, well, what hurt me here? What might that say about what matters most to me? Because that's what hurts us when we get hurt in the places that matter most. What could this say about that? And what could this say about what my core gifts might be? Like maybe you're one of these people who you're at a table, everyone's talking, somebody says something kind of harsh or nasty, or maybe not true, and you just cringe inside, you feel it. But it looks like nobody else in the room or at the table is noticing it. That's a core gift place in you. Or something touches your heart and you maybe almost move to tears, or you just feel kind of really inspired. Those are the things that fill your heart. If over 2 days, every time you find your heart hurt or filled, and you note down what it is and what that says about who you are and what matters most to you, it'll end up being like a connect the dots puzzle. You will find themes emerging, and those themes will teach you what your deepest core gifts are. So for everyone who is listening now, every single person, I encourage you to make a promise to yourself that you will not date anyone anymore, ever, who doesn't value these intimate core gifts in a basic and consistent, albeit imperfect, because we're all human, way. When you make that choice, your search for love will change. This is how I say it to people these days. I say that the key question should become, does my soul feel safe with this person? And if your answer is essentially yes, celebrate. If your answer is essentially yes, and there's a spark of mutual attraction, do a dance, because that's an amazing, wonderful thing. And if your answer is no, trust that and honor it. So these are just some of the principles that I wanted to talk about for all of you, and I think you could see how this fits in deeply with your recovery journey. Because in my understanding, as your recovery grows, you become healthier and healthier, and you can notice what hurts your heart and what fills your heart more and more. And you can address those things in ways that aren't out of the zone of disconnection, out of the zone of protection. You can start addressing those things from the gift zone. And when you do, those are the skills of intimacy. And in your dating life, you want to only look for people who, when you do that, they make you feel essentially safe and heard. Those people are your path to happiness, and they're your path to love. So this is kind of like the promises in a way, similar to the promises, which to me, the promises are one of they're one of the most beautiful pieces of literature ever created. I adore the promises in program. But this is kind of like a version of what happens when you identify and honor your core gifts. These things will happen. You will lose your taste for people who chip away at your sense of self-worth. You really will. You'll understand your life and your relationships in a new way. Your sexual and romantic attractions will begin to change. Not quickly, slowly and gradually, but they will change. And you will meet and notice and attract people who honor and choose someone who is like you. And you will access deep springs of meaning, joy, and tenderness. So, what are the next steps in your journey? They are learning how to educate your attractions. When you take these steps of learning to name and honor your core gifts, and when you decide you are only going to choose people who treasure these parts of you, and that's what you're going to look for, only in your dating life, your attractions will begin to change. We cannot force our attractions. We can't be sexually attracted to someone we're not sexually attracted to. However, we can educate our attractions. And when we do, our search for love transforms. The learning to lead with your core gifts in your intimacy journey, which fits in exquisitely with your recovery. Exquisitely. And then when you start finding these relationships, most of us have to actually rewire the ways we love, because we have learned to love in defensive, protective ways that keep us safe in not necessarily the healthiest ways. So there's an exquisite, hard, humbling, and glorious, just like the path to recovery, it's all those things, process that we need to go through of rewiring the ways that we love. These are all things that I talk about in more detail in my podcast. And Tammy, should I now tell people how they should get in touch with me before the questions, or should I do that after?
Please go ahead. Please do that right now.
Okay, sure. So everyone who is single, or everyone who knows anyone who is single, we have a new site up where people meet in a way that is inspiring, connected, human, joyful, and emotionally safe. These are actual events, and these events started a long time ago in the real world, but now we're doing them exclusively online. And when these started many years ago, the recovery community in New York knew that these were events that were safe, recovery kind of approved events. So deeperdating.com, it is a way to meet other values-based single people in ways that are kind and connected and human. So, we just have launched this, and I just very much encourage you to go there, sign up for our mailing list, and start interacting with people there for free, because it's completely free at this point. My podcast, you can just go to Deeper Dating Podcast. It's a podcast that, is getting a lot of support. It's charting in a number of different countries. And it's a podcast where all of these ideas that I talk about, I actually take time and really help capture in deep and rich ways. And it's not just for single people, it's for everyone. There's the book, Deeper Dating, which is available everywhere and was a #1 bestseller on Amazon when it came out, and is a beautiful book that is the course of everything I've talked about. It's a course in a book, and it encourages you to do that process with a learning partner. So any of these places are also vehicles, well, not Deeper Dating, but deeperdating.com and deeperdatingpodcast.com. You can use those platforms to reach out to me personally as well. If you're interested in my speaking, if you're interested in help spreading the word about deeperdating.com, or if you have any questions for me, or if you'd like to hear about some of the intensives that I also offer. So I think that covers a lot of the basics.
Well, it does. And if anyone has questions, feel free to IM me and I will, ask them. So right now we don't have questions, but I was, first of all, it's amazing information and it's such a different way of thinking. I love how you've paired through recovery, and how dating is all part of that. I'm going to ask respectfully again, don't request to share, just IM me and I'll ask the questions. But, it's really easy to say, I'm not going to date anybody who isn't a good fit for me, who isn't helping me, with move forward in a different way. But then I thought, then there's the reality. So do you have any practical tools for, like, how do you resist, picking someone who isn't going to not help you move forward?
Okay. Well, let me break that down. And what I want to say first is that the people that you want to stay away from are the people who actually re-traumatize you. I want to just say that those of us who've experienced trauma can get re-traumatized by lots of different things that are not necessarily, necessarily even directly related to the other person. But people who chip away at your sense of self-worth, this is actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because here is a very simple distinction that I want to make that is incredibly useful for everyone who's single looking for love. There are essentially two circuitries of attraction that we all have. These are what I call attractions of deprivation. Now, these are the scratch the itch attractions that feel so sexy and so white hot. And they are with people who a lot of the attraction comes from the fact that we recognize that they're available, but not really. That they're kind, but not really. That they have integrity, but maybe not so fully. And we get so trapped because there's so much love there or warmth there or potential there. It's very hard to let go of those when we don't have anything else yet. But these are attractions of deprivation, which are essentially not safe, but which we try to make safe. And those, we that's like that kind of like playing hard to get thing that engages that. That's one circuitry, but we have another circuitry. I was single for decades because I thought attractions of deprivation were love. There's another circuitry. That is the circuitry of what I call attractions of inspiration. That's when we're attracted to somebody because of their decency, their creativity, their generosity, and their integrity. And we get attracted to people based on those things. A few things happen. One is that there's a glow that we feel. Another is that we experience our fear of intimacy in ways that we don't with attractions of deprivation. So it's a different journey. These attractions of inspiration grow slower, but they are where happiness lies. They are X marks the spot for where we want to build our home in the world. So as we do this work, as you do this work, you learn to differentiate between those two attractions.
So the next question is, who do you choose, or how do you find a dating accountability partner?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful question. So if you go to deeperdating.com and you join and you fill out a profile, one of the questions is, would you like a learning partner? And, you know, many people say yes. And then you can actually do a search. You can search for, males or females in a particular city, but you can also search for people who are looking for learning partners. And we're a new site, so the numbers are still small, but they're growing quickly. So that is an easy way that you can find a learning partner.
And then the question on the circles that on your slides, there's a question, do you have a slide that shows the circles with more detail? Would that be on your website at all or in the book?
Oh, no, that's a beautiful idea, and I love the intellectual rigor of that concept, and that's something that I would love to develop, the strata within each of those rings, but that is not available yet. But it's a fabulous and smart idea. But I just want to go back to 1 second to the learning partner question.
Okay.
And just say that many people get the book or my audio video course, which is available on deeperdatingpodcast.com and is a kind of more intimate and dynamic way to do the work. Many people then look for people they know who are single in their lives, who they already know and love, who they feel safe with, and use those people as kind of learning partners. And recently I was at a wedding and I met someone who said to me, Ken, I have been single forever. This is my partner. This is my husband. And met him finally because I finally had a learning partner who helped me through my stuff. And he said, my learning partner's over there. He's with someone as well.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm in big favor of using the people in your own life and using them as learning partners.
So continuation, is it true someone should wait at least a year in recovery before dating? I have 3 failed long-term relationships, but I think they were all based on attraction of deprivation.
Yeah, here's what I would say about that. That is basic recovery wisdom. However, I would say I would say it this way, that it would be really important to talk to your sponsor about that. Let that be a discussion that happens between you and your sponsor, perhaps you and your therapist, but particularly between you and your sponsor.
And then they ask, could you give some more examples of core gifts?
Absolutely. I'm going to give you a whole kind of string of core gifts. Are you someone who has had a deep longing for love that has been very powerful and often so strong that it almost hurts? That's a core gift, that longing for love. Are you someone who's deeply, deeply sensitive to the nuances of connection? And where connection is broken, it just hurts. And when connection is filled, it really fills your heart. That's another example of a core gift. Do you have like a tenderness of spirit that has made you feel kind of too soft for the world? Another one. Do you have a love of truth which has gotten you in big trouble? Another one. Do you have a quality of generosity that maybe has gotten you in trouble because people have taken advantage of it? And I want to say something here about codependency. I think that codependency is talked about so often as a pathology. Rob Weiss does wonderful work around this subject as well. But what I want to say is that another framing of codependency is that codependency is a core gift of generosity that we have not learned to have wise, sober custody over yet. um, passionate intensity, a creative edge that makes you see things in really deeply different ways, a hunger to create. Anything where you have a hunger that's very deep. A lot of people feel like they are too tender for the world or too soft for the world, or they get stepped on all the time. Perhaps you have a deep quality of humility. Humility is a great quality, but if we can't learn to dignify that, people step on us and we're taught that it is a weakness when in fact it's not. Um, Deep introversion is a quality, can be a quality as well. A longing for spirituality. Any of the things and ways that you can discover your core gifts are the things that hurt you the most and the things that fill your heart the most. But those are just some examples.
Okay, the next question is, I tend to be drawn to men that are unavailable. I'm sure it's because I was raised in an alcoholic home. How do I work on this and have a healthy relationship?
Well, that's the heart and the soul of so much of what we do here. I want to take a minute to think about how best to answer that very important question. So I'm just going to take a moment and think. How best.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to say a few things about that. The first thing is you are developing a new taste and letting go of an old taste. This is rewiring in its realist sense. It is not going to be quick and it's not going to be immediate. It's a slow process, but it's a very doable process. And here are some of the basic principles to make that happen. One, the naming of your core gifts, because the qualities that are core gifts of yours that you have not yet learned to treasure and dignify will make you susceptible to unavailable people. The degree to which you cannot embrace those core gifts, it's like that's not just suppressing those gifts. It's an act of quiet violence against your being. It creates a vacuum where your deepest self is supposed to be. And that vacuum, as a vacuum, will get filled with masochistic relationships again and again. So the more you can treasure and honor those core gifts, watch, the more you're going to become attracted to people who also do, and the less you're going to become attracted to people who are unavailable or don't. That's one piece that I want to say. The other piece that I want to say, and what I'm doing is like, what I'm giving you is like a map where an inch is 100 miles, right? But then when you go down into reality where an inch is an inch and a mile is a mile, you see that there are like roadblocks on the road and there are detours. There's a lot of stuff that comes up. It does not mean the map is not true. It just means that it's kind of truncated. So I'm giving kind of a deeply, deeply simple inch equals 100 mile kind of framework here. But another thing that I want to say is huge. This is the biggest saboteur of healthy love that I believe exists on the planet. It's what I call the wave of distancing. For those of us who are used to being attracted to people who are not available or not healthy relationships, when we meet people who really are available or really healthy relationships, the chances are great that after the initial excitement, all of a sudden we're going to become totally bored. Or we're going to become wildly irritated at their laugh. Or something about the way they dress is going to annoy us unbearably. Or our sexual attraction is going to whoop, just disappear all of a sudden. These are the wave of distancing. And this is when people flee the relationship because they haven't been taught. It's a wave. What it is a spasm of unconscious fear. And all you have to do is get through that wave and the feelings will come back. How do you get through the wave? Two ways. Do not flee and do not force yourself to do things you're not ready to do. Take a little bit of space. Let the wind pass between the two of you. Think about the qualities that you're attracted to. Know that your psyche is going to need a little bit of room to breathe because it's getting a little freaked out here. But don't run. Your date might have been a romantic dinner. And maybe you're like, oh, I'm not ready for a romantic dinner at home. Let's go to the movies instead, or let's go for a walk. The minute you inject space and room and stop pressuring yourself and try not to freak out, oh my God, I'm so messed up. I'm so afraid of intimacy. I can't even be with an available person. Or tell yourself, oh, I guess I wasn't that interested to begin with. No, this is a hallucination. It's a spasm of fear that is unconsciously wanting to get you out of there. So you give yourself space, you're gentle with yourself, you don't judge yourself, you realize the feelings are going to come back. If you could just give yourself and the other person space and just enjoy them for a bit without pressure, just watch how often the feelings come back. And when they do come back, you will not only have them come back, but you'll have a clearer sense of whether or not this person is right for you.
So the next question is it true that love and fear run through the same routes in the brain? I've always thought that explained why in early recovery my spidey senses were off, and I thought that intensity of apprehension, fear was love.
There's really interesting research on this, and I think that they run through circuits that are close and connected, but not necessarily the same.
Okay.
And they, yeah, very often. There's fascinating research on that. You can look up Love on a Suspension Bridge to read more about that.
So a continuation, what if I want to remain in a relationship with someone who has the potential to be a good partner? Is that a form of self-betrayal that I choose to stay with someone who isn't yet or may never be ready to reciprocate at the level I desire?
Okay, I'm going to give you an example. My husband, I am Mr. Feelings, as you can tell. My husband is a tech person. He is wonderful with my feelings and the feelings of people he loves, but to get him to talk about his feelings, like, it just doesn't happen. So that creates difficulty. That creates challenge. That creates an environment where it's extra hard for me to share in some ways because I often feel like I'm alone in that. Have we talked about that countless times and kind of held our relationship with care as we looked at it? Yes. Has that been good enough? Yes, it really has. So what I would say is, if your partner is imperfect in significant ways, join the Humanity Club, so are you, so are I. If your partner, though, is willing to do the work, if your partner is not abusive, if your partner is sober, if your partner is willing to hold you in kind ways and look at this and work on it, and if your heart feels filled in many ways, I'd say probably yes. That's my answer there. If your partner is not willing to commit, and if that's an ongoing thing, that's a problem. That's a problem. That's worthy of discussion. And this is what Oprah says: listen to what men say. I don't know if your partner is a man or a woman or another gender expression. It doesn't matter to what that person said. If they're not going to be available for intimacy and commitment, take that seriously. And it probably is best to be with someone who is available for that. If they're trying and they're working and they're committing and they're imperfect and they're not abusive and they're sober, in many ways you've done wonderfully.
I'm going to say, and what they do, because sometimes, especially with addiction, what I say and what I do can be different. So, okay.
Very good point.
Next question. This is a practical one. This person was on the Deeper Dating website and couldn't find the section about accessing the learning partner. Can that be done specifically? Is that they have to go through the membership information, right?
You have to fill out a profile. You have to fill out a profile. Yeah.
I thought that was the case. I'm thinking, let's see. Okay. I think that one is good. Let me just check.
And I'm glad you went to the site. Thank you.
So this person says, I'm new in recovery, but also a love addict. So I'm going to listen to Dr. Ken Page's podcast and learn more about myself before trying to date. This is the first time in my life that I've lived alone since April of the year of this year, and I have a lot to learn. And I'm going to also encourage you. You know, Dr. Rob Weiss does sex, love, and addiction, and there's lots of this person, and I think it's a female, but don't quote me that. But lots of female sex and love addicts on that on his groups, and join us on sexandrelationshiphealing.com as well. We talk about this stuff all the time, and you know, how to learn to have healthy relationships, and how to, you know, have a posse with us, all of those things that are, you know, help us do things differently than the ways that we did it in other ways. So yes. So
I can't encourage that enough. Yeah. Dr. Rob's an amazing resource.
We are out of time, so I so appreciate you joining us again today, and we will have another Super Saturday Recovery Summit. Stay tuned for all the information to be posted on the In the Rooms. The videos from today's will be posted on there as well. And for those of you in the US, have a happy Thanksgiving coming up in a socially distanced, safe manner. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.